welcome to Champions of Canada. Today Amarjeet and I are interviewing Sudnya Mulye, who is the founder and director of Sudnya Dance Academy, which is a center for teaching Bharatanatyam and the performing arts. And we have Sudnya with us. She's a champion guest. What says Amarjeet?
बिल्कुल आज हम सुन्या मुनि जी से मिलेंगे और सुन्या जी बहुत ही अमेजिंग डांस आर्टिस्ट हैं, टीचर हैं, परफॉर्मर हैं और जिन्होंने कि इस लोअर मेनलैंड में बहुत काम किया है, बहुत बच्चों को टीच किया है एंड परफॉर्म किया है।
नमस्कार।
थैंक यू वेरी मच कि आप हमारे इस प्रोग्राम में आए और आपका बहुत बहुत स्वागत है। प्लीज़ आप बताइए आपकी कहानी, आपकी जुबानी में इस प्रोग्राम में।
Thank you, Navin Ji. Thank you, Amarjeet Ji, for first of all inviting me for this, Champions of Canada. Before even I start my kahani, I think just the name Champions of Canada makes, I think, everybody feel कि you're too great. And
Thank you.
I'm not as great as, what everybody might think is a champion. I think जो कला मैं करती हूँ, भरतनाट्यम, ये एक सदियों पुरानी कला है। इसी में कोई चैम्पियन नहीं हो सकता वैसे, मगर हाँ, हम ट्राई करते हैं कि जो हम whatever we are learning, whatever we are presenting, whatever we are teaching, we try our best, and that's where we try to become a champion, right? So, my kahani, my story. At the age of 5 is when I started learning Bharatanatyam, that too not really knowing what I was doing. It was my mom who basically wanted that if she ever has a daughter, I'm going to teach her Bharatanatyam. Yeah. That was her dream.
So it was pre-planned.
The point was I used to, bachpan mein you're playing around and having fun, and I used to be like literally picked up from a playground and thrown into a dance class. So I was really upset, never liked dancing, never hated that whole part, the procedure. Sooner or later, as we started performing, and then it's like, in Canada we say to all the little girls, would you like to dress up like a princess? And then they are all loving it. Till then, they don't like the idea of riyaz, practice or anything. Similarly, when I started going on stage, that was the time when I really started. That was age around 7. So
started pretty early.
Started very early. So at age of 5 is when I started my training, and by 7 it was like the basic steps. Guruji ne kaha ki bhai stage pe jana hai, yearly show hai, but then you get to dress up. Yeah. So then you look forward to it, and then that's how you start kind of committing to it. That's how it all started. Of course, I went through many gurus. One of my guru was the very first guru is Guru Shetty. Later on, I went to Srimati Poonam Murdeshwar. And then also there was Guru Kalyani. When I was in grade 10, as in India, after 10 you go to university, or rather we say college over there, I had no idea what it's going to be like if I leave dance. To that level, I was very involved in dancing, did a lot of competitions, and then you get involved in it. But at that point, I was very, very sure I'm going to go for arts. I'm going to take Sanskrit and finish in do my masters, but simultaneously keep working in Bharatanatyam. I also had my admission done for arts, and while I finished that admission procedure, I came home, there was a doorbell, and one of my neighbor auntie, she came running to me saying, Sudnya, there's a dance college, which for me was new, never knew this existed in Mumbai, and it's an Indian classical dance college. And I said, where? So of course she gave me some numbers, we called the number, and they said, well, you can come as soon as possible. The story is really interesting because my parents were not home. And I had made a decision I want to go to dance college. It was very, so I called my dad and he was in a meeting and I called him and I said, here's what I've heard. Is it okay if I go for it? Yes, go for it. My mom was working. She's now a retired school teacher. I called her in school. She thought it was an emergency. So she came down. We had a conversation at the gate of the school.
Okay.
And she said, okay, did you call dad? And I said, yes, I did. What did he say? Yes. Okay, then go. That was it. That was the decision made. Now the question is, I've already done my admission. How do I go to another college, canceling this one? So I grabbed one of my uncle and I said, let's go to this college where I've done for my arts. And we went to the front desk and I started explaining. To my luck, my admission papers were right on the desk.
On the top.
On the top.
On the top.
And for some reason, the person couldn't, of course, they can't just suddenly give me the papers. So we had quite a long discussion. Whoever the head person was heard our discussion and he came and he said, what's happening? I said, this is my story. This is what I really want to do. He said, okay, here, take your papers. You never submitted your papers.
Oh, wow.
I took my papers and I went to the dance college. The name is Nalanda Nritya Kala Mahavidyalaya, which is affiliated to Mumbai University. The founder is Dr. Kanak Rele, a great exponent of Mohiniyattam. I entered, and that was the last admission. So that's where my real journey began, right? And I finished my bachelor's and master's at Nalanda Nritya Kala Mahavidyalaya, and then had a lovely experience because it restarts. The journey since childhood was a dream, and now it became reality, that dancing is not just moving your body, but to this art form, there is a lot of history, philosophy, spiritualism, and much more that you need to be knowledgeable about. So I started that as if it's going to be an exploring journey. That time I was not sure if this could be my life. Because when you start learning, you realize you know nothing.
Yeah, it is
You
hard.
know nothing. It's very hard. It's a lot of commitment. But the teachers were amazing. The way they trained us, the way they gave us the confidence. At this point, Abhinaya was my forte, something that I was always drawn to. And with my luck, when I was in the third year, our principal, Dr. Kanak Rele, as we lovingly called her, Kanak Ben, Kanak Ben decided to do one particular production called a Shilapadikaram, which is also one of the epic known in south of India. And she decided, okay, you are going to be the main role called Kannagi. Lovely news. But I was scared because all the seniors above me were not selected. Then why me? And that why ate me up more than anything else. So I had to, this was my inner journey. This is what she gave me a chance to know who I am, what I can do. If she has chosen me, there must be something that she saw, because it's a very demanding role. It's pretty much Kannagi who rules over the whole show. And how was I going to do this? That day, the day she trained me for Kannagi is where my whole life changed. I think I was in her office for almost 6, 7, 8 hours. And the only thing I heard is, do you know Kannagi? Let's begin. And then it all started, what the story is, how to develop the character, how to think for her, who are you, who is she, question, answers, thinking. And it was like a meditation, for a whole day. I think when I came out, I was a revived person. That Kannagi gave me a lot more than even what I could have imagined. And I realized, yes, this is going to be my life. This is where I'm going to work for. This is what I'm going to work for, is understanding what Bharatanatyam is and what Bharatanatyam gives you.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
So that's been my journey. After Masters, of course, I continued with another teacher. And later on, as any Indian girl, I got married. Moved to Canada in 1996, started the academy in 1997. This year is the 25th year, so the journey has been really amazing, and many things have happened since then, grown in different ways. So that was my training over there.
So Sudnya, I was about to ask you a question, that how did you dance your way into Canada? So, but you have already answered that in a way. So you like the transition from back in Mumbai or India, wherever you were.
Yeah.
You're
I'm from Mumbai, yeah.
So Mumbai to Canada.
Vancouver, right?
How
Yes.
was the journey?
The journey was, of course, something it was a new married life, so I had no idea of how that's going to be. Neither did I know what my dance journey is going to be. I was just open to it. That was the way I looked at it. Of course, we knew that when you get married, you know that this is secure place. Rest we have to figure out. To my surprise, people always ask me, did you get a cultural shock? I didn't. When you live in Mumbai, you actually grow up in a very multicultural environment. A cosmopolitan. So you're not really surprised to see Western culture around you. What surprised me is, living in India, you always think that classical arts are quite familiar to people in North America, and that was not the case in Vancouver. Again, I'll say Canada, I shouldn't say Canada because the other part of Canada, Toronto and many other places, the classical arts were quite known in mainstream or to the public. But in Vancouver, it was just like a fistful of people who knew about it.
A bit different.
But and it was great to show that there was a good understanding of this is classical and this is folk. So folk tradition was certainly well known and very popular, and they knew this is classical, but they just didn't know anything about it. So that journey was quite interesting because as people knew the folk and the Bollywood dancing more often that they saw, the first question, I still remember, the very first question asked to me was, so do you do a bulb dance?
A bulb dance.
And I'm like,
Bulb in,
no.
bulb out.
Well, yeah, exactly. So I'm like, no. And I didn't know bulb, and I'm like, what bulb dance? Because that's not something you grew up with.
Correct.
And I'm like, oh, okay. So now the folk dance in mainstream is more known as a bulb dance. Okay. And then that's where again the different type of struggle started. Like it's not a struggle, rather a journey. How do I make it more accessible to people where I'm now going to be living my life? And luckily I got introduced to many lovely people. There was only one organization that used to invite artists from India. So I started attending and watching the shows. And how do artists who I've always seen in India, how do they perform outside India? And it's a different vision you get. Because all these great exponents, like beautiful classical dance artists, when I saw them in India, the way they would come on stage, the way they would present themselves, even the dance pieces that they would present, were way different than what they performed outside India. And it was a learning lesson again. Like, Sudnya, you're outside India, think different. Not out of the box, but think different. And it's going to, that shift was very important. Because gurus always teach you, and this is what I learned. Like gurus, whether you're learning from them or they're performing, they will always teach you. And I think that shift made me think more than what even I was about to start. A different experience again. And then I was lucky enough in the first 2 years, the great late Birju Maharaj was in town. And yes, the way I went for Kathak workshop, I said, I'm going to just meet gurus, get an experience again. So I went for his workshop, and then of course he got to know I'm Kanak Ben's student. So he immediately shifted his teaching towards how a Bharatanatyam dancer will learn Kathak.
Way of teaching.
Completely changed. I was the only. That was his greatness. He caught the point. And he's like, Kanak ki beti ho? Aaja idhar. So he got me to sit and he explained me, देखो सुधन्या, भरतनाट्यम में ऐसे होता है, कथक में ऐसे होता है, right? So you get like, I don't think I would have got that experience in India.
Correct.
Birju Maharaj ji के पास बैठ के इतना समझ के लेना, I think that was like a great thing, the luckiest moment of my life. And the big lesson that he taught me right then there, are you going to live here? I said, yes. तो यहाँ के स्कूल को समझो, यहाँ के स्कूल्स में कैसे पढ़ा, सिस्टम के समझो, स्कूल में टीचर्स कैसे पढ़ाते वो समझ लेना, because you will need that reference when you teach.
क्या बात, brilliant.
Brilliant मतलब आप like you think कि भाई मुझे सिर्फ perform करने के लिए I have to shift, but now you're also thinking how I'm going to teach.
Exactly.
And then that guided me to do towards a lot of school workshops. I started off with Vancouver School Board, and then there was Art Starts in Schools that I traveled across BC giving workshops in schools, and I learned a lot. Anyways, that was the journey of teaching again. So many more.
क्या बात. So you were the first Bharatanatyam dance teacher here, performer here, or someone was before as well here?
When I came here, one person I would like to say, her name is Nimmi Baliji.
Okay.
And Nimmi Baliji had a background of Bharatanatyam, and she was running a school, and she was very kind enough to help me out, like, Sudnya ji, why don't you come, Sudnya, to my school and see how to teach students? Why don't you take an experience by teaching at my school? So that was my first experience of how do students kind of learn, and it was a different, because I was having a great school that I was running in India, and I had to leave everything, but over there, the cultural background, the understanding is different. And when you come here, they look at they're looking at the time, like, it's 1 घंटा हो गया, अभी मुझे जाना है 1 घंटा, like I have to go here. And I couldn't understand, like, how could they move from Bharatanatyam to soccer to this? How does their mind work? Like, you only look about one act, one hobby, and these are like kids who are into every extracurricular activity. So again, it was a great way of learning from Nimmi ji that, हाँ सुधन्या ऐसे ही होता है यहाँ पे. That kind of learning.
दिमाग से निकल जाएगा. तो सुधन्या जी, जैसे दूसरी हमारी क्लासिकल डांस आर्ट फॉर्म्स हैं, कुछ डांस आर्ट फॉर्म ऐसी हैं जो कि प्योर या टेक्निकली बहुत ज़्यादा शो ऑफ होती है ना. जो भरतनाट्यम है उसमें भाव का कितना महत्व है, कितना इम्पोर्टेंस है उसमें भाव का, कथकली में है, दिखता है, या ओडिसी या हमारे जो कथक है, तो अलग अलग डांस फॉर्म में उनकी अलग अलग इम्पोर्टेंस है. भरतनाट्यम के अंदर वो जो भाव प्रदर्शन है उसका कितना महत्व, कितनी इम्पोर्टेंस है?
And should I just add to your question? Yes. I've been thinking about it that as he spoke about the gestures, two things came to my mind. If you see on phones and WhatsApps, there are emojis. So they resemble a lot of hand movements of Bharatanatyam or any traditional Indian dance style. And the second is, while if you see these Kung Fu movies, so even some of the hand movements there resemble Bharatanatyam.
See, Bharatanatyam itself is like representing life. So whatever is around you gets represented. To go back to our history, the book that we all have, all the classical art forms have evolved from is Natya Shastra. If you look at it, it's Natya Shastra. Shastra is science. So it's a science of dramaturgy.
Beautiful.
Right? So if you go back to it, and if you read, and if you look at the book written by great sage Bharata Muni, the reason that book was created itself, as they say, the story goes as there were 4 Vedas and people couldn't understand exactly how to read and follow those Vedas. So they requested, the mythology goes as they requested Lord Brahma, can you create something that is much more accessible for a common person? So then they, putting together all 4 Vedas, Brahma created 5th Veda called as Natya Veda. So then he took essence of each Veda, which became more of a kind of as a performing art, right? So then that Natya Veda is also Natya Shastra, being asked by his disciple Bharata Muni, who wrote down. If you read through Natya Shastra, it talks about universal emotions. It talks about gestures that are from day-to-day life, technically presented to be performed on stage.
So in a way, they thought about universality even
from day one.
Day one. Yeah.
From day one. So it was universal. It just so happened because it was born, or I would say existed or originated on the land of India, we say it's an Indian cultural art form.
But it was universal.
But it is always universal. Right? So bhav, if you and I are having feelings in day-to-day life, Bharatanatyam is always going to express. And my definition, when from day one I've been hearing Bharatanatyam is bhava raga tal ka milap. I never agreed to it as a definition. I agree with the words, but I don't agree because if you go to Sanskrit language, bha cannot be pronounced as bha.
Correct.
Bha and bha are different. So if you bha is bhava, bha has to be bhakti, which is devotion. Ra automatically becomes rati. If I take this as an acronym, right?
Okay.
Bha, bhakti, ra, rati, which is passion, and ta becomes tapasya, which is meditation, contemplation, and bhava, raga, tala, which is the emotions, melody, and rhythm, become the supporting elements to represent all the three above.
Wow.
Which then is presented in the Natyam form.
Correct.
Right? So Bharatanatyam, again, if you look at the word Natyam, Natyam is actually drama. So enacting is part of Bharatanatyam. So then bhav, naturally, that emotions, the rasa nishpatti, as what Natya Shastra really focuses on, is rasa, which is an experience shared by an artist and then experienced by the audience. While they give back their share, if they have experienced it, they are going to give back to the artist their response. And that give and take is called as rasa nishpatti. Right? So that can only happen if you have expressions, if you have emotions being expressed. And then there are many details of how it has to be done and so on. But there are 9 basic emotions that every person experiences, and they're all universal. So that's how it is.
अगर हम उसमें से अगर ये कहें कि भरतनाट्यम सिर्फ टेक्निकल या प्योर भरतनाट्यम करना हो, उसको आप किस रूप में लेती हैं?
प्योर भरतनाट्यम भी रिदमिकल होता है, रिदमिकल होता है, लाइक कंप्लीटली. एंड
उसमें हैंड जेस्चर्स एंड मूवमेंट्स एंड उसमें एक्सप्रेशन की कहाँ जाती है, उसमें थोड़ा एक्सप्रेशन या नहीं बिल्कुल
होता है. Like recently I was teaching this to my students. I said just because you are dancing rhythmical patterns, robot के जैसे मत करो.
Correct.
बिकॉज फिर आप में और रोबोट में कोई फर्क नहीं है. बिकॉज आपको कुछ रिदम दे, यू आर डांसिंग टू अ रिदम. द सिंगर हैज poured his soul into it. Like they are singing from their heart. The instrumentalists are playing from their heart. So you have to connect. You have to connect to the musicians to represent what they are singing through your movements. So it's
pure connection, no disconnection.
No. So I very funnily say ki, dance has to become musical. And again, I come up with funny words for my students. I say music has to become danceical.
That's nice.
Right?
आप कुछ हमें, हमारे श्रोता जो सुनने वाले हैं, दर्शक, कुछ ऐसा सीक्रेट बताइए. क्यों अमरजीत, ये आपका क्वेश्चन है, आज मैंने पूछ लिया, मैंने कहा आज मैं आपसे थोड़ा चोरी कर लेता हूँ. तो कुछ ऐसा सीक्रेट बताइए जो आपने शायद किसी को ना बताया, जो आप हमारे शो पे स्पेशली बताना चाहें कि
अभी तक किसी से शेयर नहीं किया है और वो आप करना चाहते हैं, पर ऐसा कोई मूवमेंट, ऐसा कोई टाइम नहीं आया कि आप वो दिल की बात हमारी ऑडियंस को बताना चाहें.
Secrets through my profession, you mean?
दिल की बात बोल दी ना इन्होंने, अब तो कुछ भी हो सकता.
Secrets. It's very hard to remember all of a sudden. वैसे तो परफॉर्मेंस, हर एक परफॉर्मेंस में कुछ ना कुछ तो सीक्रेट होता ही है. कि you don't want to let your audience know कि आप भले कोरियोग्राफी भूल गए हो, कुछ हो गया हो. ऐसे भी होता है कि सडन कवर अप हो जाता है. एंड ऐसे हुआ है, बहुत बार हुआ है. एक क्या, ऐसे बहुत सीक्रेट्स है फिर कि शो पे आप जाते हो एंड देन स्टेज फियर, इनिशियल स्टेट, you go through a stage fear and that very moment you feel I don't want to go on stage. And I've done that. I've done that as not when I was going through my dance college, but at the initial stages where I don't want to think about it ever, because if I would have not stepped on stage on that day, it would have been something different for me. But I prepared myself. I went for a competition. And my teacher was so looking forward to it कि ये बस करके आएगी, मेडल लेके आएगी. और मैंने इतनी कोरियोग्राफी चेंज की स्टेज पे. I changed it so much.
Just for yourself? Yeah.
For myself. Now I was a solo competition, and my teacher was looking at me. Great, she's changing, but does she know how to end it? Because while I started changing, I didn't realize it. Okay, so I was smiling, dancing the way she had taught me, And I started realizing this is not ending. This is not going the way it was planned. In the middle of the dance, I realized I'm dancing totally different things. And now I couldn't look at my teacher because my teacher was way scared than me, because the way I was dancing, the whole route, it was going to end in a disaster if I don't focus on beats. And she didn't know how to help me through it. Like she's in the wings trying to, but she said, I don't know what your mind is thinking, right? And I said, Bhagwan pe chhod diya, literally. I'm like, I'm going to move. And somehow I found a moment where I could blend her choreography with my thoughts, and I ended it on beat. But that secret, my teacher said, don't ever say it to anyone, because other students will learn from you that you can change on spot anything, because the other students knew that choreography, right? So if I'm changing, the idea was like, did teachers change it for her? Or what happened? And she's like, no, it was decided only for her. And that was the secret that she kept for this long. Sorry. I had to.
आप एक या दो नाम बताएं in Canada, who you think you look up to those people? It can be anyone.
Well, there are two people I always look up to. One, I did work with Lata Padaji in Toronto, and my very first experience of working with someone and dancing for her company.
And who is she?
She is a great exponent of Bharatanatyam in Toronto. And when I worked with her and I lived with her, it was again something new to learn, like how to run a company, how to work with artists, how do you take care of dancers, because she's been teaching here for more than now, I guess 30-40 years. So that experience counted for me. That was like, wow, I'm again with a guru. So I came back very inspired, and I created my own show because of the way I worked with her. And she was always happy to share. Like if she sees an artist who is ready to learn, she's ready to give. And that was my lucky moment that she was ready to share. And the second person is, I actually look up to many people. I would share two. One more is Vidyut Akluskar, Mrs. Vidyut Akluskar. And she's the वो मैं तो उनको घर वैसे मेरा यहाँ का मैका कहती हूँ, संस्कृत प्रोफेसर. Both of them, actually uncle and auntie, both of them, the way she has worked with with her Sanskrit and background and everything. She's a writer, she's a poetess and everything. And the way she works in a way practically, like if things are happening, great. If they're not happening, let it be, I'm moving on. That moving on moment is very important for artists, because artists get caught up in that moment and they're like, ye aise hona tha, like, why didn't it not happen? And she's not that person. She moves on. And I think that was also very important for her. So artistically, I certainly got inspired by Lata Pada, and that moving on is certainly by Vidyut Tai, as what I lovingly call her.
छोटा सा क्वेश्चन है पर थोड़ा सा मुश्किल है. वो आपकी दो बेटियां, ठीक है ना, एक माँ होने के नाते और एक आर्टिस्ट और टीचर होने के नाते एक जिम्मेदारी है आपकी इंडियन क्लासिकल डांस के लिए, जो कि हम उठा के घूमे. आप कितने सेटिस्फाई हैं अपने इस प्रोफेशन से? नंबर एक. नंबर दो, क्या आप ये चाहेंगे कि आपके बच्चे इस प्रोफेशन में आए और आगे जाएं? नंबर तीन, क्या फ्यूचर है इसका?
Many questions.
Rapid fire, right?
Rapid fire, okay? Yeah. So rapid fire.
Yeah, you can't
yes.
take too long.
No. First was, how satisfied am I with my art form? I'm completely satisfied. I think I sleep well at night. That's how I always say. Because
that's satisfaction.
That is a satisfaction. Because I think whatever I work, I give my full % to it. If the student is not receiving it in a well way, that is a challenge for a student, which I do mention that, look, I've been giving you, or if I'm working with someone, if the creativity is not going to the level where I would like it to be, I think the challenge is not me or him or her, it's about that moment. So, this is where Vidyut I always say, like, move on. This is not happening. Let's move on and let's figure out things. So when your gurus have given you enough knowledge to figure out things, you move on.
Exactly.
तो वो satisfaction रहता ही है, because then you,
हाँ,
like you basically move on and then you figure out that this is how it's going to be. And I've had many shows where the co-artists did not show up, or many challenges have come and you have to move on, right?
Now let's move on to
The next question was,
the second, third, fourth.
the second was my daughters. Yes, they are learning Bharatanatyam from me. Thank you, I appreciate that. Both are interested. They've always have shown interest in learning. I don't think I give them a choice, but even as they have grown up now, they do understand. I mean, at certain age, I did ask them, are you interested? Would you like to continue? And if not, you can always take a break. It's hard to say that because as a mother, you don't want them to. But as a dance teacher, I completely understand that a student needs a break. Will they really continue in future?
प्रोफेशन में इसको लेके आएंगी या नहीं, आप क्या सोचते हैं उसके बारे में?
I don't know. I leave it to them.
आप चाहेंगी?
Yes, I would love them to see it taking, then I always talk about it for not just them, because they're just like them. I talk to all my students. Look, if you want to, you can always take this. If you don't want to take it as a major career, you can always take this as a secondary career, but you don't have to let go. And there are many artists that my students, my daughters got to meet, who are by profession doctors and lawyers, and yet 100% even today giving time for their practices and everything. So it's an example that I have to show, because for them, I'm not the example. Because this is my career. So I cannot be showing that, look, I have been doing this, you should do it. But when they see another person who's doing their regular profession as they want to do, and plus dedicated to the dance, that becomes the best example for them. So I've always shown them examples and then I leave it to them. हाँ जी, हाँ जी, और एक
हमने इंडिया में सीखा, यहाँ परफॉर्म किया, वहाँ भी परफॉर्म किया, वहाँ भी टीच किया, यहाँ भी टीच किया. So जो सोचना है वहाँ के स्टूडेंट्स का और जो सोच यहाँ के स्टूडेंट्स की है, क्या फर्क है?
बहुत फर्क है.
कितनी सिमिलरिटीज है और कितना फर्क है? क्या वो सेम उस तरह से आर्ट को जैसे हम लेते हैं, हमारे लिए तो ये पूजा होती है ना कि भाई भगवान के जैसे, यहाँ के बच्चे क्या सोचते हैं?
उनके लैंग्वेज में समझाओ तो वो समझ जाते हैं. पूजा कहना कभी कभी डिफिकल्ट हो जाता है, बिकॉज वो जो हम कहते हैं वी से कि हमारे लिए ये एक पूजा है, उनके लिए पूजा वर्ड नहीं होता, मगर उनके लिए होता है कमिटमेंट.
That's even better.
राइट. तो मतलब उनको अगर उनके भाषा में मैं समझाती हूँ कि आज आपने यू आर कमिटेड, और कभी कभी थोड़ा मज़े से भी समझती हूँ कि हाउ कमिटेड आर यू टू वॉचिंग योर शोज ऑन TV और योर वट एवर चैनल यूर वॉचिंग ऑन. And then we actually talk about those events sometimes, like, what did you watch? What was it all about? And did you watch that artist? How did he or she get there? That's the way to reach to them.
That's commitment.
That's commitment. I said, if that's their dedication, that's their commitment. If you like that artist, do you think that artist just woke up one day and reached to the level that you see him or her? No, there must have been a hard work.
Years of perseverance.
Yes.
मैं ये पूछना चाहूँगा कि आप जिस लेवल पर हैं, जो लेवल आपने क्रिएट किया है बच्चों के लिए, या जो इंस्पिरेशन क्रिएट की है हमारे बच्चों के लिए, जो ना सीख रहे हैं या जो देख रहे हैं, जो देख के आगे आते हैं, जहाँ सुधन्या मुले खड़ी है उसके आगे वो क्या सोचते हैं?
सुधन्या मुले कहाँ खड़ी है? पहले तो मुझे कभी ये सोचना पड़ता है. I never think कि मैं कहीं पर रीच हो गई हूँ, because I've done productions, I've done अरंगेत्रम्स, everything. 25 साल का जो भी काम है, निचोड़ के भी अगर मैंने सोचा ना, like even if I come to a conclusion, at the 25th year, I think it is again a first year, because now the real work begins. Like you are working towards 25 years of work, and now people look up to what you have created. Maintaining what you have done is very important. I think this is where the real first year begins. And if I don't think that way, then it will make me feel it's coming to an end. So what do I see for future? Lot more. The whole trend has changed. Recently, as we all know, TikTok has taken over, particularly over the pandemic. I didn't understand why kids are attached to it. And now when I talk to them, suddenly TikTok word is in my conversation. Did you watch that TikTok video? And I'm like, earlier I used to say, did you watch this YouTube link?
Yeah.
Or did you go and watch this show? And suddenly I'm now saying,
TikTok.
Have you watched this TikTok? Because in those 30 seconds, you are supposed to show everything. So now I give them a challenge. So basically, I learn from today's generation and I adapt and I move on to it again. And what I've decided, or I always have made myself understand, if you don't go with the flow, Sudnya, the art form is already traditional.
Good.
And you don't want it to be understood by the younger generation that it's old, antique, heritage. No, it is today's art. Because the universal emotions don't end. They're always going to be there around you. So, batane ka tarika, dekhne ka tarika will change. Presentation will change. But if you can do it in 30 seconds, you should be able to long it for 2 hours of show.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Sudanya.
Thank you
Nice
so much.
catching up with you. Thank you, Amarjeet.
Thank you so much. And मैं ये कहना चाहूँगा कि भाई हमारी शुभकामनाएं हैं आपके इस जर्नी में, आपकी म्यूजिकल जर्नी में, आपकी पारिवारिक जर्नी में.
Wish you all the best.
बिल्कुल.
And may prosperity and health be with you forever.
And I wish you both the same. Aapka Champions of Canada should be growing and it will grow across the globe.
That's our effort. Basically to bring honesty and honest interviews and in recognizing the contribution of people.
Especially our community, हमारे बच्चों
Thank
के
you.
लिए.
It was fun. Thank you.
Thank you.
Namaste.